Taoiseach, tens of thousands of mainly working-class youth on this island were slaughtered in Europe as a result of the rivalry between major imperial powers, jockeying for influence, for territory, for markets, when that rivalry exploded into the First World War. Taoiseach, have you learned nothing from the history of our own people and of small nations in Europe when you go and fully support the policy of the European Union towards the Ukraine? And isn't it obvious now, or is it obvious to you, that the EU was avariciously pushing its own selfish economic and political agenda in the Ukraine to trump the equally avaricious Russian elite represented by Putin and company? Of course, the ordinary Ukrainian people detested the rotten Yanukovych dictatorship. But is that justification for the European Union to collaborate to the hilt with right-wing, semi-fascist, repulsive political forces, xenophobic and anti-progressive in every single way, such as Svoboda and the right sector, conspiring with them to be the cat's paws of the European Union to advance its economic agenda within the Ukraine? Is that what you support? Now, Russia should be condemned for its interference in the Ukraine, absolutely. But Taoiseach, do you not recognise the hypocrisy of your government and of the European Union in the way that you are pushing for sanctions, when you uttered not a word, or anybody else in the European Union, against the far more bloody intervention of EU's allies like the United States and Britain in Iraq, for example? What sanctions did any Irish government ever support against the United States or Britain or Blair and Bush for the bloody criminal invasion of Iraq that has left hundreds of thousands of people dead? Now, and are you satisfied that, for example, the new government in the Ukraine that you and the European Union now put up as the great new Democrats, that they have installed oligarchs, billionaire oligarchs, as regional governors throughout the Ukraine? How does that serve the interests of the ordinary Ukrainian people, working class, peasants and poor, to install oligarchs who robbed blind the resources of the country, taking advantage of the collapse of the revolting Stalinist regime? So, can I ask you in conclusion, Taoiseach, do you not agree that the poor people of the Ukraine, in the tender embraces now of the Troika or its equivalents, what kind of a future exists for them in terms of being lifted out of the poverty and the hardship that exists for so many, installing the new, even a worse neoliberal economic regime, which is what's going to happen? And will you not recognise that the people of the Ukraine have the right to be left alone from interfering imperial powers, whether it's Russia or the EU, to decide their own future without this type of meddling and string pulling behind the scenes and economic pressure and blackmail from both Russia and the EU? Would you not state those as principles in opposition to the hypocritical policy that is being followed?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
I think you should bear in mind that what happened here is that the people of Ukraine wanted to join with Western countries in terms of the development of their economy. Mr. Yanukovych decided that he should do deals with Russia over their heads, and the people rebelled. Mr. Yanukovych left, and his party in government changed their view. So it's not meddling from the European Union. It is the invitation of the Ukrainian people and the government in Kiev to sign political agreements with the European Union instead of sign agreements with Russia. So it's not a case of invasion by the European Union or pressure from the European Union to force them to look west. But I do agree with you that the winners here should be the people of Ukraine. It should be. But the question is, will they be given the right of determination of that in terms of their elections coming up? When you look at the issues that have arisen in Ossetia, Transnistria, in Moldova, in Chechnya, where the Russians have given passports to ethnic Russians, where they send in people to take over the equivalent of council offices, block the streets of the towns, and then there's an incident, so then there's a need for protection. And that's why protectorates have grown up with Mr. Putin's stated ambition of restoring the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics to its former glory. And that's why the people of Ukraine said, we want to open our doors and our borders to the European Union. So I don't agree with you in that Europe was forcing the pace here. Europe was requested, Europe was invited, Europe was encouraged, and in response encouraged people in Ukraine to do business with the West. The oligarchs that you mentioned are very favourable in the eastern Ukrainian region towards the government in Kiev, and obviously have an interest in seeing that their people are able to do business with the European Union. But we don't want any more situations, Deputy Higgins, of subsidised gas, which created billions of euro for particular people over the last number of years. And when you make the point that that Europe has meddled in the affairs of Ukraine, I point out to you that just a number of years ago, the per capita income between Ukraine and Poland was the same. And a number of years on, it's many multiples of that in Poland from what it is in Ukraine now. And that's why the people in Ukraine want to aspire to getting out of the situation that they're in, to have greater prosperity, development of their economy, and the right to live their lives and have jobs. So yes, of course, everybody has a right to be left alone. That's not what happened in the Crimea. And I'm well aware of World War I, well aware of Sarajevo and what happened, and well aware of the slaughter of so many innocent, mainly young men, in the so-called war to end all wars. In fact, if Lord Raglan and Lord Lucan and General Nolan had got their calls right and their directions legible, we might not have lost the Light Brigade at the Battle of Balaclava in Crimea, over 130 of whom were Irish horsemen. You know those names from your history yourself. So I don't accept that this is a case of Europe wanting to barge into Ukraine and say you must join us. This was the wish of the people of Ukraine. That was a wish that was not respected by their then President Yanukovych, and the popular revolution left him to flee to eastern Ukraine, with the government in Kiev focusing on the west. Clearly, Russia don't like this, and Russia made its move into the Crimea, and as a response to that, the European Union and other countries are imposing sanctions of various types for what is not acceptable, what is regarded as being illegal, and to the detriment of freedom and democracy, by invading the territorial integrity of Ukraine, handed over by Khrushchev in the 1950s, now annexed again by Russia, a matter I think that will continue to be a source of a lot of difficulty in the times ahead.